Hello, friends. So, so I don't have a good system for, here we go, for holding busy brushes. All right, we are here. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. Let me see if I can get my own monitor. There we go. And this is Daily Art Adventure number 724. Woohoo! Painting, which I've called Painting Skinny Lines with Fat Brushes. Now, okay, let me introduce you to my painting here. I started this Wednesday night. Today is Friday, so night before last. I worked on it 3 or 4 hours on location. Worked on it a couple hours yesterday, maybe 2.5, maybe 3, I don't know. And then a couple more hours today. I'm quite happy with it, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Right now, I want to talk about a very particular problem. And this is a huge problem with many, did I say that enough times yet? Many early journey painters. The question is how to paint skinny lines with fat brushes. Some of you are saying, well, why would you ever want to paint skinny lines with fat brushes? Because you are assuming if you want a skinny line, you just pick up a skinny brush. And that precisely is the illusion, delusion, horrible habit that I want to disillusion you of. So let me demonstrate a couple things. So many beginner painters, they're thinking if they want to paint a fat line, you take a fat brush like this. This is a canvas with a hole in it that did a whole bunch of demos. And you go like that and you paint yourself a fat line. Actually, you go like this. That's a beginner would hold their brush like this probably. All right? And then they say, and if you want to paint a skinny line, you pick up a little brush like this and you go like this. More or less. All right? Now, I am here to burst your bubble. I am indeed. I'm here to utterly deflate your illusions so that you can trade them in for things that are not illusions. Okay? So what I just demonstrated to you is wrong, 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 wrong. Again, some of you are going, what do you mean? Here's what beginners think. Fat brush, fat lines, skinny brush, skinny line, and bear with me here. And God help us if you really need a really, really, really skinny line, you pick up like a, this is not a Winsor Newton. How about that? It's a Robert Simmons, #1. And you stick out your tongue, hike up on your brush, and go. Right? Everything that I've just showed you is wrong, wrong, wrong. And I want you to know it's wrong so that you'll stop doing it. Many people do it. I'm going to be a little bit mean, so put on your seatbelt here. I'm being mean, not just for the sake of being mean. I'm being mean because I'm a good teacher. And dang, I want the whole world to stop doing this and become better teachers. Here's the mean part. I judge a lot of shows, a lot, 3 or 4 a year. I don't know if that's a lot. So there's 100 to 300 paintings. I walk into the room, into the warehouse, and I have to judge. Even the shows I'm not judging, of course, I can't help judge. I just want to say this. I can spot an early journey beginner, disillusioned, confused, messed up, immature, bad, early, young painter. Whichever one of those words you want. Literally from 20 paces. Now, and I'm not even talking composition, which you can see from 50 paces. No, I'm just talking brush strokes. And it's real easy. After I've done this before, but you might have missed it. After I tell you, you'll be able to spot it too. An early journey, beginner, wannabe, amateur, student painter, one of the things that marks their work is that their painting has a plethora, an abundance of marks that are all roughly that width right there. Just that one thing. A whole bunch of lines in their painting. They had to draw something in their subject matter. They had to outline the boat. They had to paint the mast. They had to paint the rigging. They had to paint the sail. I'm being silly with my subject matter. They had to paint the flower. Okay, now these are all immature lines, of course. But what I'm getting at is the uniformity of width is death to a painting. So real quickly, first of all, that idea that you paint skinny lines with little brushes. The skinnier you want, the smaller the brush. Now let me go back to, it's an okay brush. Let me go back to this one that I made these marks with, first of all, okay? Let me just maybe amaze you. That remains to be seen. We'll find out if you're amazed or not. I'm just mixing up a dark color here, kind of a purplish. Okay, same brush that made these marks. Now watch this. And you might be saying to me, well, you can't tell me you hold your brush like that all the time. Oh, you haven't watched me paint, have you? I do indeed hold my brush like that, something like that, almost all the time. Okay, so do you see how fat that brush is and how skinny lines I'm making? That's because I know how to handle a brush. And now that you've watched me, you do too. This grip is almost always the death of brushmanship. Because if you hold your brush like this, you're going to press down on the canvas and make those god-awful fat mark lines that I was talking about earlier. And then you say, well, those are fat lines. I don't want that. So I'm going to pick up my smaller brush. And then likewise, holding it this way, you're going to make those awful. I can't say enough bad things about the reprehensibility. I'm really being mean today, but it's because I don't want anybody watching this video ever to do that again for the rest of your life. So there's several things I'm saying. One is you hold your brush. You don't hold your brush like this. I'm 99.5% done with this painting. I have not held my brush in this manner one time, and that's typical for me. The only time I hold my brush like this is when I do my signature. That's another subject altogether. Everything else has been painted with the blade of the brush. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. Nope, I'm sorry. I do want to talk about skinny lines with fat brushes, but first I wanted to get away with that. Just say one more thing about that, about holding a brush in the wrong manner. If we were to take like if you're painting at this canvas, here's your brush, and there's your canvas, and if we put a camera right here shooting the end of your brush, if the tip of your brush essentially looks like this, so here's your canvas, it's like a cross section, here's your canvas, and here's your brush magnified, okay, there's the shiny ferrule, and here's the hairs on your brush, the bristles. And you're going in this direction. You with me? So here's the black part of the bristles, and let's pretend, just to make it clear, and you've got red paint on your brush, and here's a line of red. You're painting, again, you're going this direction. All right, you with me? I'm still on the mishandling of brushes topic. If the bristles on your brush assume this shape right here, this bent curved against the canvas. What can I say? I've already used all my bad words. Reprehensible. Creepy. Awful. The dead giveaway that you don't know how to paint. I'm sorry, I'm being really mean. And is there ever an exception to this rule? Of course, there's an exception to every rule, but you better know what the rule is before you start trying to claim exceptions, or you're probably just screwing up. Okay, this is not how you handle brushes. Then you say, well, smarty pants, then how do you handle brushes? And I'm going to zoom out for a little bit, and I'm going to show you more or less how you do handle a brush. Same drill. Painting with red paint, drawing a line down. Our hand is going this way. You paint it like this. Now, let me act that out for you. So you're the camera now. Let me find a brush with longer bristles on it. Hang on. It needs to be a brush that isn't all stiff. My brushes all eventually get stiff. And I have to put them in that solvent. All right, this will do. All right, so once again, here is bad painting. Do you see that brush bent? That is horrible. That is horrible. That is horrible. And it's part and parcel with the way you're holding the brush. Somebody say, well, my teacher told me to hold it way back. Yeah, okay, let's try that. Same problem. This is better, and there are some good painters that paint that way. But most of the time, this is the way you paint. With the blade of the brush. The bristles are not like this. Just etch that in your mind. Bad painting, good painting. Bad painting, good painting. Bad brushmanship, good brushmanship. All right? Whew. Boy, I'm glad I got that out of my system. Now, let's move on to painting skinny lines with fat brushes. And I'm going to zoom in here on this painting just to the top, I'm almost finished with the painting. I've got all these telephone wires, power lines, whatever they are, I don't care what they are, they're just junk up there in the sky. And as you can see, at the moment they're real messy, they're kind of fat. So let's talk about how to make them skinny with fat brushes. And it's real simple. As soon as I start, you'll go, oh, why didn't you say so? That's easy. All right, that'd be a perfect response to what I'm about to tell you. Oh, that's easy. So as you can see, I've thrown down, if I can use that term, I've thrown down the telephone wires, power lines, in several different layers, by the way. I didn't do them all at once. I certainly didn't do them in the last few minutes. They've been there a while. And now I'm mixing up at the moment. I don't think it's the right color yet. I'm trying to mix up an opaque blue. So that means the paint that I'm mixing right now has white in it. Let's see if I'm close. Nope. Too intense. So I'm going to kill the color with some raw umber and a little bit more white. So I'm trying to match, and this is pretty important. I have to match. Whoops, now it's too light. So add some more phthalo to it. Now what about those? You see, I just smudged out what I... All right, that's real close. So look at this great big fat brush in my hand. Now, of course, I get to decide which of these dark marks to keep and which ones to discard. And, of course, I need to change color now. Are you able to see that? Let me zoom in just a little bit more. So far I've been using all blue. But there, that could be the end of the broadcast. That's how you do it. That's how you paint skinny lines with fat brushes. The answer is you paint a messy fat line, and then you skinny it up. You carve it up by painting opaque, whatever color is behind it. In this case, it's a blue, kind of a dull blue sky. Now, of course, I need to be careful. I'm way up here in the corner. I don't want too much attention drawn to this part of the painting, so I'm not going to be too neat. I'm going to let it be kind of messy. I'll do a little bit more blue right here. So I hope that's making sense to you. Is it? That's how you make skinny lines with fat brushes. It's simply a matter of color matching. I mixed up some blue that equals or matches. I'll do a little bit more up here. The color that's behind these wires. And then I just carve into the dark lines. Let's do just a little bit more way over here. Let's change brushes now. I'm going to put the blue ones down and pick up some. I already did a little bit of pre-mixing before I started this broadcast. Now I hope that I have on my brushes a color that matches my clouds here. Okay, so it's going to take a minute for me to get exactly the right color. Now, when you do this, of course, do you see that bright light, that bright mark right there? That is not good, right? That's not called a match. So I'm going to smear it out. I'm going to spread it out. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this mixture that I've got on these brushes. Again, just to match whatever's there. You have to get more blue. So you're continually remixing paint to match, because it's not the same color. I mean, if this was a solid blue sky, it'd be easy, right? But of course it's not. It's got all different kinds of colors in it. So I'm continually remixing as I go along to match whatever's behind the part of the wire that I'm painting at that moment. Oh, there's a complete mistake. Back to blue again. All right, so I really don't have to do any more. I've shown you the answer. The problem is I'm not done with my painting, so I need to I need to continue this project for a little while. Now, right here, am I going to make that one wire or two? In the end, I don't know yet. I'm going to start out, see if I can make it two separate wires. Let me just call them wires. I don't know what you call telephone wires, power lines. I'm just going to settle on wires for now. Okay, so so look, can you see this area of the painting right here? How much, just with a little bit of work that I've done, skinifying, making thinner, making skinnier the wires. It already looks better. And of course, I'm still painting in a abstract realist manner. I'm not, by no means am I aiming for a super realistic effect. That's not, frankly, that's not real painting. And if you wonder what I'm talking about, then whew, here we go again. Daily Art Adventure 716, a week ago, where I spend a whole hour and a half doing nothing but explaining and giving examples of what is real painting and why I call it that. It sounds very harsh, I know. It sounds very belittling of all my hyper-realistic friends, and I feel real bad about that, but not bad enough to stop teaching what I consider to be the truth. So, here's one way to paint skinny lines. All right, so what principle am I modeling right now? We talk about it all the time, right? Anytime you have a oft-repeated, highly repetitive pattern, mark, shape in your painting, you have to come up with you must come up with several different techniques for rendering that shape, those shapes, that repetitive thing. And of course, here we go again. These wires constitute just that very thing. There's a whole bunch of wires. That's repetition, right? So whenever you have repetition, you have to invent, concoct, create, one way or the other. Put your creative thinking cap on. You have to come up with several different methods or techniques for rendering that repeated shape. Okay. Now I just made both of those double. I'm not sure that's a great idea. I'm going to leave it for now. Normally I would just make one of those a double wire and the other one just a single wire. But for the moment, I'm going to leave it just for now. I'll maybe change my mind later. Let's do a little bit. Do you see this church steeple that has wires going across in front of it? And it looks at the moment like the wires were drawn on top of the steeple paint, if you will. And indeed, they were. So that is not a pleasant effect. Why? Because the wires are dark and the steeple is light. The rule is darks first, lights last. So you don't want to do dark last, you want to do light last. Are you following me? The wires were drawn or painted on top of the light colored steeple, and that creates an unattractive mark. Okay, now again, those of you, if there's anybody watching me and you are securely ensconced in the first half of your art journey, okay, just in case there's any newbies watching, this is almost mantra-like repetition on my channel. The first half of our journey, our job is to learn to paint stuff that looks like stuff. And in that stage of the journey, you would paint the steeple and then paint stuff in front of it, because the wire is in front of the steeple, not staple. And if you're going, why don't you just paint the steeple first and then paint the wires on top of it? Then congratulations, you are in fact in first half of your art journey. You're learning to paint stuff that looks like stuff. Once you graduate from that, and many never do make the jump to hyperspace, but you should be one who aspires to do so. Join the ranks of good painters, not super realist painters. Whew, boy, that was a mean mouthful. First half of journey, learn to paint stuff that looks like stuff. Second half of our journey, you learn to paint stuff that looks like paint. Whoa, what does that mean? It means all the abstract elements of painting, line, shape, color, design, value, texture, and so forth and so on, are more important than the picture. And in that stage of life, see, why did I just smear that? Was it to achieve, you know, a higher degree? Did I see it in the photograph? And the answer is, are you kidding? Of course not. It's not in the photograph. I just know that that smear is going to look good. Why? Because I'm painting paint that looks like paint. Okay. I want to get off that subject right now. I want to get on to other stuff. So I'm nearly finished with this up here. There's a little bit of some wires in front of green trees, so I've mixed up some green already. This wire right here is a little bit too fat, as is this one right here. Now let me mix up a darker green for over here. By the way, yes, as I'm skinifying, as I'm making these wires thin, my brush does in fact go right over the wire sometimes. In other words, I blot it out. I obliterate the wire completely here and there. So it becomes, instead of a steady line, it becomes essentially a dotted line. And that effect, that little trick, actually goes a long way toward making the wire appear appropriately skinny. Like right there, intentionally painted right across the wire. Somebody's crying downstairs. That's why I'm upstairs. They're wonderful kids, they really are. But they're kids, so they all take their turns having meltdowns. Over here, whoops, over here, I've got I don't even know what color that is, bluish gray, brown, bluish gray brown. So let me try to mix up a bluish gray brown. Close enough. And then some green. Now I'm just looking around for any place where the wires, still focusing on the wires, where they just appear too fat. Yes, right here indeed. Somehow I missed this one. When I'm doing color matching like this, by the way, which is pretty standard in all of my painting, in the final edit layer, which is what I call this stage that I'm in right now. A lot of color matching. That's when I use my secret. That's not a secret because I keep telling everybody. My secret formula for killing color, like you're mixing up a color, and it's just about right. It's just a little too chroma, a little too intense, a little too bright. All those words suffice. My go-to to kill the color, that is just to push the chroma down, is raw umber. It's gentler than, say, a black or something really intense. And as if you follow me, you know, you've heard this before, I also make sure that it's a cheap student grade raw umber. I know that's so weird. I don't make a habit of buying any other, at the moment, I don't make a habit of buying any other student grade paints. You know, like most people, I tend to avoid them for good reason. Although you can paint with student grade paints. I don't like snobs in this regard. You just want to make sure that they're color fast. But anyway, I use student grade raw umber because I don't have to be quite so careful. It's like it's a more blunt instrument and easier to, if you have a high quality raw umber, you have to be really careful not to pick up too much. All right, that's what I'm trying to say. All right, I think I'm done with the wires. So there you go. That's how you paint skinny lines with a fat brush. It was actually a two-part lesson. The first part was everything I showed you with the diagram and a piece of paper. But if you'll stick with me, well, even if you don't stick with me, I'm going to move on and hopefully finish this painting. I'm very close. Oh my goodness, what a mess I just made. Rats. Oh, I've invented so many ways to make a mess. It's just, I amaze myself. Not even going to tell you what that was, but just, I have a drop cloth, but I sure have dropped on it. Ah, I didn't see that coming. My Gamsol got dropped off. So now I'm doing something which I don't like doing at all, which is wiping Gamsol on my skin. Anyway, if you weren't here, I'd run down the bathroom and wash my hands right now, but I'm going to forbear. All right, let's talk about, somebody just asked me, where can we find, Hannah, that's funny you should ask. I almost posted that yesterday on my YouTube community page, right? Community page is where publishers like myself can put up photos and documents. So let me try to do something here, do something weird to remind myself when I'm done broadcasting to upload that document that shows my step-by-step. Now, it was never terribly accurate even when I made it, and now I've evolved some since the time I made it, so take it for what it's worth. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about this painting. This is a old, well-known, historic part of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's called 5 Points, a little business community, probably dates back to the 30s or 40s. This is Hayes Barton Drug, and there's an old soda fountain, restaurant, cafe in there, then a row of shops that are always coming and going. I've worked on it quite a bit since I stopped broadcasting yesterday. I was showing you yesterday, in yesterday's broadcast, I was working on it all over the place, here and there and everywhere. Since I left you, I finished these striped awning things, finished the steeple, and especially, and this morning in particular, I worked on those cars, as you can see, quite a long time. Now, as I was working on the cars, I was reminded of a principle that I want to repeat to you again. let me paint while I'm talking. There's a few little details that I haven't finished yet. One is there's supposed to be some white, of course not, I mean it's painted white in real life, but I'm not going to paint it white, of course. There's some white window frames in these windows here. They look a little bit too much like black eyes or something. They're just too dark. So I think if I can get just a hint of light in there, it will help. Let me find a photograph. There we go. Take it for those of you who weren't with me yesterday. This is essentially, again, I started this painting en plein air. Started it on location, of course, but this is one of the many photographs that I took while I was out there, and that's what I've been painting from then. I am anxious to read your comments. Somebody just said something about Grand Rapids, Michigan. The beautiful Ionia County Courthouse. Well, surely I've been through Ionia many times, so I must have seen the county courthouse. Eh? When I was a kid, on TV every summer, fall, they would start advertising for the Ionia Free Fair. And as a kid, that sounded like heaven on earth. A fair that's free. And I couldn't understand why my dad wasn't as excited about the concept as I was. Dad, it's Ionia Free Fair. That's funny. Anyway, thank you, Deborah. Oh. Try to remember. I would love to get. I haven't been in Michigan for a year or so, and the last time I was there, it's on the other side of the state, over in Rochester. I grew up in Michigan. Still love Michigan. Miss it to some degree. All right. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to move on ahead to sometimes my last layer, my last phase sometimes of the painting, which is broken color. Now I'm going to tell you that on this particular painting, I'm going to be a little bit cautious about broken color, because I feel like that part of the charm of this painting is it has a real moodiness about it, you know, and I love, I don't know the word is somber, melancholy, not quite that. That's overstating the case a little bit. I love, there's a better word, I'm forgetting what it is. I'll just say moody. I love moody paintings. Not everybody does. Some people want everything to be happy. Oh, you didn't see that gesture. You're lucky. Some people want everything to be happy. To me, this peaceful, it makes me happy. But it makes me, I'm going to be just, I think, a little bit more cautious than normal about broken color. Now, before I get started, I want to show you some of the broken color that's already here. I'm going to pick you up off your perch back here. Forgive me as I give you a little bit of a wild ride. Calm is, yeah, that's not quite the word, but it's related to that. All right, I just want to show you some of the this green stripe here, and there's another one right here, and another one right there. That's unusual. 3 green swooshes, and I'll tell you what they are in a minute. And here's a red one. Can you see that right there? I'm not sure you can, but yeah, red. Here's a couple red ones over here. Here's an orange one. And there are others that are more subtle than that. Red down here. You regulars know that I start out my paintings with completely abstract marks. Of course, I don't even remember what here's blue right here. I don't even remember what my abstract marks. It's not my job to remember. But I know that these green marks in particular came from, because I recognize the color, came from glue stick, from oil stick that I did right when I was finished the acrylics, right before I did the first oil glaze. I did a bunch of colors, and that's where that green came from. The red, I think, right there, I think that's from this, and maybe up here, I'm not sure. Anyway, doesn't matter where they came from. I say this often, I'm going to say it again. And forgive you English majors, you just endure it. I'm not smart enough to paint good. It's supposed to be paint well. But if I say paint well, I lose the parallelism. So I'm writing like a country music song. I'm violating grammar in order for it to rhyme. Right. I'm not smart enough to paint good, but I'm smart enough to spot good paint when I see it. Okay? So, for instance, I'll pick on this green swoosh right here beside. Again, you realists, those of you in the first half of your art journey where you're busting gut trying to paint stuff that looks like stuff, way to go, that's what you're supposed to do in the first half of your journey. But you're completely confused, if not turned off, by something like that. It's like, is there a banner outside the stores? Why is that green there? And of course, the answer is no, none of it. Same thing with this. Even though there's grass here, this is the wrong color and it goes the wrong way. Here's the grass and there's the green mark. Someone, again, in the first half of their journey would say, what's that supposed to be? Of course, the answer is nothing. It just looks cool. Both of those look cool, as does this one here, as does this red mark. All right, so I do a number of things in the painting process to create visual chaos. So I've already got that much sort of broken color in my painting, and the painting is hanging together very well as a kind of moody. So I don't want to do too much more, but I'll do some. I just am saying to you that I'm probably going to be a little bit more gentle, cautious than normal. I'm mixing up a pale lavender, pale purple, which in normal the rest of the world is called lavender, and I'm putting lavender on these green leaves, the green trees up here. Is there anywhere else that's not related to lavender? Yeah, right here. Yeah. Yeah, how about over here? Yeah, I've got all this distant architectural bits going, which is pretty realistic. Anybody that knows this neighborhood will recognize that building. Anything else that's calling for a little hint of lavender? And again, when I say calling for it, I don't mean in a realistic sense. I don't mean realism. Hey, I was going to say something about the cars, then I got, as always, distracted myself. Let me go back to it for a minute. So, as I spent a couple hours this morning, fairly focused work, a couple hours of fairly focused work, painting these cars. But I want to, as I was doing it, I thought, oh yeah, this would be a good time to repeat a principle that I've stated before. And it is this. And again, this is for you people who are trying to get out of the first half of your art journey. You're trying to graduate to the second half. That's a lot of what I talk about on my channel, is how to get past that, how to make the transition. All right, here's one concept key, one trick for doing that. If all the time that you spend on your painting is directed toward creating more accurate, precise, or tight realism. In other words, if the longer you paint, the more realistic your painting becomes, because you're working on detail and accuracy and so forth. If that describes you, then as a painter, then time is your enemy. And I'm talking again, especially to those of you who are stuck in Tightville and you're trying to get out. So I just told you I spent maybe 2 hours painting those cars this morning. I don't know if it was 2 hours, but an hour and a half. I don't know. So I've got by the way, I've got a pale green. Now, let me be honest. When I'm doing this broken color thing, very often I'll say, oh, you know what? This is not broken color, but a little bit of that pale green would look really good up there in those trees, for instance, okay? So when I'm doing that, that is not broken color. That's local color. That's realistic color. That's completely predictable color. The only time it's broken color is when I put down this color green in an area that doesn't make any logical sense, like that right there. And a little bit maybe on that license plate, that could be easily interpreted as you know, a license plate that's green. So I'm a little bit stuck about where to put green. Not having much. Well, here we go. There we go. Yeah, right here. So right now the mullion in that window is a dull purple. So by putting a little brighter green on it, ooh, that was nice. Now it's almost broken value because it sticks out so much, but I'll let it slide. All right, I'm going to clean the green off my brushes. So back to my statement, I was referencing my cars in particular. Let me repeat myself. If all the time that you spend on your painting is spent making the painting more realistic, then time is your enemy. In other words, the longer you spend on your painting, the worse your painting will get. All right, and again, I'm only talking to the 99% here. The 99% of us who you would describe your journey as I would describe mine, as a journey from tight to loose, or from first half of our journey to second half. Okay, so don't be embarrassed or ashamed, man. That's myself included. My whole last 20 years of my life has been a journey from tight, accurate realism to good painting, where I'm painting now much better. I'm painting stuff that looks like paint instead of stuff that looks like cars. Okay, so let me flesh that out a little bit. If all of your paint time is spent making your painting more and more and more realistic, then time is your enemy. That means the longer you paint, the tighter your painting is going to become. And that's what I mean by the worse your painting's going to become, because I'm assuming here that you're in the second half of journey. I'm only talking to the people who are trying to get looser. The rest of you, you're still in first half. You don't even worry about this yet. You're learning how to paint stuff that looks like stuff. So the big question is, well, what's the alternative? Oh, glad you asked. What's the alternative? I didn't know I had any choice. The longer I spend on a painting, the more detail I do, right? Right. So here's the alternative. By the way, I've got a very pale off-white. Let me change that. Let's go to pink. I need to have some, well, I need to clean those brushes. I don't want that color pink. The solution then is, while you are painting, and I'll just go ahead and say, while you are painting your realistic image, like cars, Some of the marks that you make are dedicated to similitude, to realism, to accuracy, to detail, right? But a good many of your marks should in fact take you in the opposite direction, so that while, and this is what was happening when I spent an hour and a half or two on the cars, much of that time was not drawing the cars, but was in essence anti-drawing the cars, making marks, smudges, pencil lines, brush marks, palette knife marks, a decent amount, a respectable amount of time was spent not creeping ever closer to realism, but in fact running in the opposite direction from realism. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I had a friend, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, I'm not going to sneeze. Yes, I am. Woo! All right. Many years ago, I had a man that I would consider a mentor, Neil Watson. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago before the internet was huge, and he was an artist who definitely deserved to be, internet famous. But he died before the internet, like my dad, before the internet was invented, so he's not so famous. Anyway, Neil Watson, you can still look him up. And he had an expression. He used to say, for every drawing mark that you make, and by drawing he meant similitude, realism, accuracy. He said, for every drawing mark that you make, you should make an art mark. And by art mark, he meant a mark that was not accurate, that was not leading you to a higher degree of similitude. Does that make sense? So there you go. So let me. I'm afraid I'm being clear as mud here. Okay, you guys, and this is 90% of you or more, who want to get loose. Here's one of the tricks to that. You're painting. Here's what you don't paint. Do this. Paint, make a mess. Paint, make a mess. One stroke that defines, another stroke that undefines. Again, Neil Watson said, for every drawing mark you make, you should make a mark. Now, I think he was exaggerating, although as I've gotten older and older and more mature and a better painter, I'm realizing he wasn't exaggerating as much as I thought. He says 1-to-1 correlation. I'm not anywhere near that, but I'm creeping closer to it. That is true. So did you catch that? So that's how you make time not your enemy as a painter. The answer is, sure, I'm going to use the word draw to convey accurate drawing, similitude, accuracy, realism. Draw equals realism in this sentence, okay? The answer is draw, then make a mess. Draw, then make a mess. Draw, then make a mess. Right? That's all I'm going to say about that. Goodness knows it was plenty enough. I'm now doing what for me is becoming an old trick. This is still in the broken color realm. If you've watched me before, you're familiar with it. It's wherever I see wherever I see a dark mark in the painting, often we can replace that dark mark with purple. It can be a dull purple or a dark purple, but Purple is the color that recedes away from us, runs away from the viewer. So it gives the impression of dark, even if it's not as dark as it appears. Boy, that was clear as mud, wasn't it? Purple looks dark. So right now I'm adding quite a bit of color to my painting by changing a bunch, and I'm using all different shades of purple, all different shades of purple. And I'm also sort of repenting, if you will, for my little mistake that I made the other night when I was up painting downtown. I was very contentedly drawing away, and drawing very accurately, I'm happy to say. So when I looked at my painting the next morning, it's like, oh, good news, the drawing is accurate. Whew, that's always a relief. The bad news is, I did all the drawing with dark black, B-L-E-C-K, a nondescript brownish gray, and darn, that was a mistake. I used to do that a lot, and I don't do it so much anymore. So what I'm doing right now is in essence rectifying or making corrections for that mistake. So it's not a terrible mistake, because again I have rectified it. I am rectifying it right now. So and it looks quite cool to have a dark bit of paint with something lighter sitting on top of it. And the color I'm using right now is actually a very dark green. I got away from purple. Very, very dark, dull, cool green. So like if you mixed green and purple together, you might get the color I'm using right now. And I don't think there's any way you could see this on your monitor. I'm sorry about that. So this has got to be dreadfully boring. I'm telling you what I'm doing, even though you can't see it. All right. Yes, I like that. I'm going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to mix up a dark brown. I usually avoid brown completely in the broken color phase of things, because I'm trying to put more color into the painting, not less. But for some reason, I saw something a minute ago that made me go, you know what? Some brown right there would be a good variety. Oh, let me refresh you of a principle. So I'm doing now at the moment dark, just not too dark, just a real nice, I don't know, butterscotch brown. That's not the right term. It's not quite chocolate brown. It's lighter than that, redder than that. Anyway, speaking of mantras, things that I say all the time, I'm going to say another one right now. That is this: you get dark with transparent colors, you get light with opaque colors. So I have, I'll zoom in, see if I can zoom in. So do you see the brown right here? That patch right there? I don't know if you can discern what color that is or not, but so I'm allowed to, it's a medium dark brown. I'm allowed to put this color, you hear that? I'm allowed to put this color anywhere on my canvas as long as I'm putting it somewhere that's darker. This has to be darker than this, or this has to be lighter than this. Because, why? Because you want always to get dark with transparent colors and light with opaque. Otherwise, if you try to get dark with opaque colors, you get mud. And if you're confused, I beg of you to go to my video right here on this channel. Just do a search for Dan Nelson Mud, and it should come right up. Not Dan Nelson's name is Mud, just Dan Nelson Mud, and it's an 11-minute video where I describe, I think quite well and quite accurately, what mud is. Now, oh boy, I don't. Every time I say this now, I go, okay. Now there were a bunch of comments on that video where people took me to task and said that's not mud, and I learned the hard way that there's a bunch of people out there in the world who call other things mud, and I'm not going to say that they don't have the right to do that. They do. The only kind of mud, so to speak, I care about is the stuff that's hard to avoid, that is confusing in painting. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just leave that right there. All right, I might be finished here. I reserve the right, of course, to look at this painting with fresh eyes tomorrow morning or whenever I get to it. And if I decide to do more, I will. I don't know if that'll be. I don't know whether that will be the case or not. At the moment, I like the painting quite well. Don't feel terribly compelled to do anything else to it. The most likely thing that I would do tomorrow, if anything at all, would be glazes here and there. I don't know where. Again, I'm not trying to make that judgment right now, but that would be the most likely thing to do. Looks like a man to me with a red shirt on. He's a little bit in the sun, so just to add a little bit of, person next to him has a wonderful gray shirt on. I'll pick you up very briefly again just to so you can see the image straight on. Forgive me. Right, so there it is. I'm pretty happy with it. What would it look like if I do this? Let me try that again. Oh, we're getting glare from the window now. Oh, it is better like this. Okay. So, if you've watched me before, you've heard me talk about painting cars in particular in camouflage. This is a classic example of cars in camouflage. What does that mean? What I mean is they're accurately drawn, within reason. But the color of the cars is mostly the color of what's around it. This car in particular. Look, here's the color of the road. Here's the side of the car, almost exactly the same color. Again, here's the road gets lighter over here. The color of the road here, especially right there, and the color of the car, identical. Up here we have bluish gray, bluish gray. That's what I mean by camouflage coloring, chameleon coloring. And all other than the blue that is pretty prominent along here, these cars are very neutral toned, very much on purpose, because I want you to enjoy looking at the cars and going ooh cars, but I don't want you to get stuck there. So I painted them neutral colored so that your eye will go back where I want it to go, which is right around here somewhere. And of course it doesn't stay there, it travels around the canvas. Whew. All right, happiness is finishing a painting. Again, this is 5 Points in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's at least the 4th, maybe the 5th, maybe even the 6th time I painted this scene. Those of you who missed my broadcast the other night, the very first plein air painting I did in my entire life in 2004. Now, And don't be fooled. I was a full-time professional illustrator for decades before I started painting. So it's not, I didn't start being an artist in 2004. I just started plein air painting in 2004. And the very, very first painting I ever did on plein air was standing essentially right in this exact spot, doing this exact scene. And it was a decent painting, especially for a beginner. But I'm happy to say that this painting is much better than the one I did 15 years ago. Isn't that good news? Whew! So if you go ever look at your old works and you go back and you're embarrassed by your old paintings, celebrate. That's a good thing. If you're not embarrassed by, not that you have to take this with a grain of salt, because sometimes we luck out and do a good painting. We do a painting beyond our current level of knowledge or sophistication, and that's great. Celebrate when that happens. But most of the time, I think, when we go back in time, we go, ooh, I'm better now. So that's a good thing. Being slightly embarrassed, I'm saying, of your old paintings is actually a good thing. Boy, I've experienced that plenty. I can't wait. Wouldn't that, think about it. I'm saying to myself, think about it. Wouldn't that be great if in 5 years I look at this painting and I'm embarrassed? Because right at the moment, I kind of like it. It would be wonderful if I improve so much over the next 5 years that I look back at this and I'm embarrassed. And I'm not getting any sound. Are you guys hearing me? It's just my monitor's not working. That is very strange. I didn't even notice till right now. Here, hang on a second. Let me see if I can get my monitor quitting again. And then I'll bid you a fond adieu. Are we there? No, we're not. Are we there? No, bad sound. I'm sorry, gang. I know you've heard me because it's quiet up here, but it's not coming through my microphone. All right, the last thing I'm going to do here is sign it, and of course paint the top and the bottom, put a wire on it, photograph it, Photoshop it, and put it up on the internet. Whew. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Wait. Fake. I should go back and see if there's any really important questions I've missed. I'm enjoying all your chats. I am. I'm not going to try to read them all. They're very good. Thank you, Uncle. He says, you make a dull, boring street feel like I want to move there. Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent compliment. Appreciate that. Hannah likes my skies. Thank you very much, my dear. Warren, thank you. I like this one very much, too, to tell you the truth. And Hannah, that's right. I still have a spray bottle over there in front of my computer, hopefully to remind me to post the step-by-step for you. David comes up with a good point. It seems like there should be some trim up here. It does indeed. There is indeed. And there is some, but it's not strong enough. Thanks, David. That's actually a good point. Let me fix that right now. There was more trim there, and it got, little by little, it got covered up by nice. So this is a little bit dangerous to do a dark mark this late in the painting, because normally, of course, if you do a dark mark, that means you have to follow it with some light. And I do. I can't leave that, so hang on just quick. I'm doing a little bit of light green right above the mark that I just made. That essentially fixes it. I don't think I even need to do yellow. I will anyway. Just do a little bit of yellow on the underside. spots a little bit here and there, adjacent to the dark mark. That's all that's necessary. All right. Glad I read your comment, David. I'm looking at, so David suggested about lavender here, not a bad idea. Uncle says, did I do that? Did I show the picture before? Let me do it again. So there's, hang on, I'll get it straightened out soon here. There's the photograph. Got it? Hannah confesses, I'm absolutely in Tightville. Hannah, that's not a bad solution, by the way. Use a grid, use a projector, do something to trace it, and then to get the drawing done, and then you can focus on painting. Yeah, not a bad idea. Yeah, and then of course, Deborah, you are correct. Cheat when you need to, but practice seeing and drawing will get you down the road. That's exactly the right thing. You cheat when you need to. Sometimes you do, but you don't want to make a continual habit of it, because your skills will deteriorate. Messing up with this, messing that border a little bit. I know my sound was bad today, gang. I'm sorry about that. Night savers, by the way, you talked about gridding. Earlier this year, January through July, I was doing large paintings, 4x6, 6x6, 6x8, and on paintings that large, I find gridding is just a lifesaver. It's just too hard to try to get, when you're working the size of the wall, to try to get things placed right. So I do think the bigger you're going, the more likely a gridding is a good idea. Love your comments, you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for your company and your input very much. See, when I get over here, sounds good. Anyway, sorry about that. Yep, good enough. Thanks, gang. I don't know if I'll be broadcasting tomorrow or not. I've got a wedding, a big meeting, and a wedding. I'm not painting a wedding, just attending. So we'll see. I'll broadcast, of course, as soon as I can. Thanks for your company. Bye-bye.